Hello, in today's video, I'm going to be taking you through a RAG AI agent that I just sold to a client for $5,000. And I'm not just going to go through how this AI agent works and how to set it up for yourself. I'm actually going to talk a little bit about the business side of it. How did I figure out the pricing? How did I set this up for the client? How did I actually give this AI agent to the client at the end of the project? We'll talk through all that at the end because I think it's something people often skip over, and it's really important if you want to actually build and sell these things. And I think this video is really important, not just to like show off and say, hey, I sold this for X thousands of dollars, but because RAG AI agents are actually a really important tool in your toolkit if you're someone who's trying to build their own AI agency and you don't know which workflows to really focus on. Because for someone who's actually been in the AI agency game for a little bit now, I would say RAG AI agents are by far the most popular AI agent in AI automation that I sell. And why is that? Well, let's think about it. What is RAG again? It's a retrieval augmented generation AI agent, which means it's an AI agent that has information about the business, about the project, about your team. So essentially, it's like ChatGPT has been plugged into your system because all those documents that you want AI to know about is now sitting inside a vector database, which the AI agent has access to and can now answer questions about whatever is in there. And that's super valuable to any business. And it's also industry agnostic, right? Everyone wants AI that can kind of act like an actual human, an actual member of their team. And RAG is a really good way to do that. And so if you're wondering, hey, what sort of AI agents do I actually need to care about and learn how to build? RAG should be number one on your list. And I think this one that we're going to go through today is a great foundation for you to kind of learn all the big parts of it. And so with that, let's actually jump into it, starting with the AI agent. We'll do kind of a high-level overview of how it works, and then I'll go through it and show you how you would set it up yourself. Okay, so we kind of talked a little bit already about the data piece, right? We're taking data from somewhere inside the business, and then it's going inside like a vector database, whatever that is. Like, what is all that? Well, it's probably the most important part of this whole thing, and that's what's going on here in the red. Long story short, we're doing data ingestion, right? We're taking documentation from the business and we're putting it inside this database for AI. And so where this client had all of his stuff living was inside a Google Drive. He had hundreds and hundreds of Google Docs and PDFs, and he wanted it to go inside the database. And that's what's happening here, right? We have a series of triggers set up that are ready to go anytime a file gets edited or added to this folder. And then from there, we're extracting all the information from that file. We're adding some metadata information like what's the title of the document it came from, what's the actual URL of that document so we can reference it later. And then we're extracting the text and sending it to our vector database. Now, I'm not going to go super deep into what vector databases are. There's a lot of really good in-depth videos in there. All you need to know is essentially it's a high-dimensional database, which means everything that's going in there is essentially being turned into a series of numbers, and then it gets put somewhere on a graph where everything's kind of similar. And if that only confused you even more, that's totally okay. All you need to know, it's a database and the AI can find stuff in there. And the one other thing you need to know is what happens to the files as it goes inside that database. So what happens is it starts chunking the documents. So what is chunking? Well, imagine I had a document that was 100 pages long. We don't just take that 100-page document and shove it into the database. Instead, we chunk it, and it gets chunked based on a almost arbitrary amount of characters. Usually it's about 750 to 1,000. So think every 1,000 words, that becomes a segment, and then another segment, and then another segment. And we throw all those segments into the database. Why do we do that? Because it just makes it easier for large language models and AI to find what it needs when it's chunked up that way. It's quicker. And so that whole process of taking information from place A, in this case, Google Drive, tagging it, chunking it, shoving it into the vector database, that's all happening here in the red. And in my client's case, it was several hundred documents. You could do this with thousands and thousands of documents. And so once it's all sitting nice and pretty in our vector database, then we come up here and we can actually interact with it. In my client's case, we actually had it hooked up to chat. We're just using a chat message here just to demo, but he had a Slack chatbot. So this agent lived inside of Slack. You could just like at it and it would actually respond to your questions. And the two things you'll see here is just the Supabase vector store and the chat memory. So we are able to save all the chats that go to this AI agent. They're also living in that same kind of vector database ecosystem, which is Supabase, and we'll go into that in a little more detail later. And then we have the vector store. So anytime someone asks a question that should be able to be found inside the vector database. It's going to call on this vector store tool. And this vector store tool is what allows our AI agent to go inside the database and then try to find the knowledge it wants. Now, something that might be new to you, even if you've done RAG in the past, is this reranker Cohere. Now, the reranker subtool, I guess you want to call it, is actually rather new to n8n. It really came on the scene in the last month or so, but it's an awesome tool that makes our RAG way more accurate. So now let's talk about the reranker and how it actually works. So I ask my AI agent a question. It then goes in the vector database and grabs a certain amount of chunks, let's say 20, that it thinks are relevant to answering my question. Once it does that, the re-ranker comes in. It's then going to take those 20 chunks and rank them in order of relevancy, and it'll give it a score out of, like, I think it's several thousand, but basically think, all right, this first one's a 9 out of 10, the second one's an 8.5, this one's a 7. And then it's actually going to take an answer based on the best ones. And that whole process is being done by Cohere. We're actually going to go inside Cohere soon, which is over here. It's an actual third-party app. It requires an API key. So there is a cost associated with it, but it's very, very small. Each question you ask, we're talking like 1/5 of a penny. But it makes our stuff way, way more accurate. Even if it's just slightly slower, you're not going to notice too much of a difference, and slightly more expensive. Now, your first question probably is, well, shouldn't RAG be doing that already? You're telling me it doesn't re-rank them? No, it doesn't, because it actually over-indexes is an opinion, kind of over-indexes on speed and cost. But with the re-ranker, we're saying, hey, just slow down a minute. I'll pay a little money. I want my answers to be accurate. And that's what the re-ranker does. So that's the agent in action. That's the tooling. That's the ingestion system. Last part, what's going on down here? What's this whole RAG cleanup thing about? So now let's talk about this RAG cleanup down here. What's going on here? Well, remember how we said we had this folder inside a Google Drive that has all the files that we want to go inside our vector database, right? Well, they all go inside the vector database. Everything's working great. What happens if I delete a file inside that Google folder? Like, I don't want it to be a part of the database anymore. What do we do then? Is it going to be automatically deleted inside of Supabase? No, it's not. And that's why this comes in. And it actually is a huge help, because I'll kind of show you later what it looks like inside of Supabase. But remember how it's chunked up? Well, you could have one file, could be hundreds of chunks. Do you want to go through all those and delete them one by one and make sure you don't delete anything else that's wrong? No, you don't. And this takes care of it for us. And you can have this on a schedule, run it every day, every 7 days, whatever. This just makes sure our Supabase and our Google Drive are always aligned. And so that's how this is all working. Now, remember, this template you can get down below in the description, and it's going to be set up just like this. What we're going to do now is I'm going to kind of go module by module, explain what they do in a little more granular detail, and also explain how you can hook up your Supabase account, how we deal with PostGres, how we do tables, all that kind of like more technical stuff. So let's dive into that now. All right, first things first, let's take a look at our RAG agent. What do we got here? Now, remember, we are just using the chat trigger here. So if you were to use a Slack bot or anything else, remember, you'd have to change that to define below. Now for the system message. So here's our system prompt. The big thing we care about here is behavior 2, and that's us essentially giving it step-by-step instructions of how to answer questions that have to do with information inside of the database. And really what we're saying is you need to strictly adhere to the context. Don't be making stuff up. Here's what I want you to do if you can't really find an answer. And then also, I want you to always cite your source, right? What's really nice is we can have it not only answer questions based on the source documentation, but it can link it as well. So someone can be like, okay, I want to know a little more. Show me the actual document. We can give them that. So that's it for this guy. All right. For OpenAI, we're just using 4.1 mini. Don't need too much power. Now, PostGres chat memory. Now for this, we're just connected to the chat trigger node. Remember, if you don't use a chat trigger node, you're going to have to change this key to something else. It's going to depend on what you're using. You'll see a table name here, n8n chat histories. That's going to be by default, and same with context window length number 5. Of note, the table, when you use this for the first time, it's automatically going to create a table inside of Supabase, and that'll make a little more sense later. Just understand you don't need to you don't have to create your own chat table. It does it for you all automatically. Next, we have our Supabase vector store. All right, use this tool to search the database. Very, very simple. Over here, the limit. So 20, remember how I talked about with the Cohere re-ranking that it could do like 20 chunks? This could be up to 100 chunks. That's how many chunks it's going to go grab and rank and figure out to answer your question. Anywhere between 10 and 20 I found is fine, but you can change it. Definitely include metadata and definitely include the re-rank results. Now, for connecting our account, let's kind of just jump into credentials right now. So if I want to create a new credential, we need your host and you need your service role secret. So what we're going to do, I'm going to show you where to find those. You're going to go to supabase.com. You're going to create an account. You can do the free trial. The free tier is very, very generous. And then you're going to go ahead and create a new project. Call it whatever you want. Give it whatever password you want, but make sure you remember it. And you're eventually going to get on a page that looks like this, that will say Chase. We'll say whatever you called the project. And once the project is ready to go, you'll see project status. You'll see a green dot. Once you're here, you're ready to continue. Now, to find our host URL, what you're going to need to do is you're going to go to project settings on the left. We are then going to go to data API on the left under configuration. And this URL you see right here, that URL is what you're going to put for host. So make sure you put that in there. And then we need our service key. So you're going to go to API keys right here. Service role, you're going to click on reveal. You're going to copy that and you're going to stick that in there. And that's going to connect you to Supabase. Now let's do Cohere. So you're going to do your re-ranker Cohere. You're going to click on this guy. We're going to do model 3.5, but again, we need to create an account. So you'll do create new credential. All we need is our API key. So you are going to go to cohere.com, sign in. You're then going to go to the left where it says API keys. And then you're going to go and hit create production key. You're going to have to put in billing. Remember, this is pennies, fractions of a penny. So you'll be okay. So once you do that, you create your account, you go to the left, you hit API keys, you'll find that. And again, the website, if you ever get confused, just go to dashboard.cohere.com, dashboard.cohere.com if you get lost. So create your key, copy it, come back here, paste it in there, connect it, and then you're going to do model 3.5. And you're now set up with Cohere. Now we're not done here. You probably noticed also this one is PostGres memory chat. And when you do PostGres, we'll click in here and I want to create a new credential. Oh my gosh, there's like 10 million things. What am I supposed to do? All right, let's go back inside Supabase. Now on the top, let me drag this down a little bit so you can actually see. On the top, what do we got here? We have connect. So you're going to hit connect. And then all these scary things, we're going to do transaction pooler. Transaction pooler. Now you're just going to start copying and pasting stuff over. So you can do host, copy that. That's going to go to host. Database stays the same. User, copy that. Put it in here. Password, remember the password you put for your project. That goes here. And then you just need to change the port. So port should be 6543. So copy that over, copy that over. And that's how you connect to Postgres. Again, if you get confused, transaction pooler, not session pooler, transaction pooler. Okay, and with that, we have connected our Postgres, our Supabase, our Cohere. I hope by now you've been able to connect your OpenAI. And always remember, you can check the documents if you ever get confused. So now we can start looking at the RAG ingestion system. But before we do that, since I like having to go back and forth so much, we're actually going to go back inside of Supabase. Okay, so we're hopping into Supabase real quick because we need to create the tables where all those embeddings are going to live, right? All those chunks in this vector database, we need to create those first. So to do that, we're going to come over to the left-hand side and we're going to go to SQL Editor. You will probably see a blank page that looks like this, but what you are going to do is you're going to go into the Skool and you're going to copy the SQL code I have in there because we're going to use that code to create the tables we need. Now that code's going to look exactly like this. So just copy and paste it into your SQL editor, hit run on the right-hand side. And what you are going to see is success, no rows returned. Now, once you see success, no rows returned, that means our tables have now been created. And we can check that by actually just going to the database on the left. And then you should see your two tables represented visually right here, documents and documents metadata. And then real quickly, documents are where all the embeddings are eventually going to go, right? All those chunks are going to live in the documents table. And then the document metadata table almost acts like a table of contents. And it's going to list all the separate files that live in there. Instead of the 10,000 chunks, it would just show the 100 files that they came from. And so now that we made our tables, we can hop back inside n8n. Okay, now let's talk about the RAG ingestion piece, right? How are we getting these documents from Google Drive into Supabase? Well, we have 3 triggers right here. So this trigger up here for file created and file updated, those are deactivated right now. Those come into effect when you already have this in production. You already set up some sort of RAG folder inside of Google Drive. And now when it's up and running, anytime someone edits a file inside that folder, or they create a brand new file inside the folder, this will trigger the automation to run and put all that information inside the database. This one right here, the search file in folders, this is more for when you first set this up for a client, because chances are you're going to talk to a client and they're already going to have some sort of folder with all the documents that they want the AI agent to work with. Just like this, right? I have these 4 fake documents in here. They might have hundreds. And the way you get that all ingested into RAG off the bat is going to be through a search files and folders module, right? And so what this one does is it's going to go and look inside a specific folder and get all the information about the files in it. And from there, we can then do that initial batch where it all goes into Supabase. So that's what this one is for. And these 2 are really for production once you're up and running. And so if we look inside here, you're going to have to do search files and folders. You're going to have to do an advanced search, and you're going to have to use a query string. So this is kind of important, and I'll kind of bring this up. You're going to see here this long list of numbers. So that is the folder ID. Where do you find your folder ID? Well, you find it in the URL. So right here, it might be kind of hard to see, but if you have your drive up, you're going to see drive.google.com/drive/folders. And then after the folder slash, there's going to be a really long string of numbers and letters up to a question mark. Those numbers between the slash and the question mark, that is your file ID. So you need to copy that. And then you need to go inside of n8n and you need to replace what's there. So it should look like that. Also make sure you have the apostrophes up there, little single commas. It should look like that. Also, you want it to return all, I assume. Also, you need to add these 4 options. You need the web view link, the ID, the name, and the MIME type. So it needs to look exactly like this. So that's that. And then for the file created and file updated, it's a little easier. Just actually map it like folder and all that. And so when I run this, we will see here on the right, it got all the information of those 4 files: the ID, the name, the MIME type, and the web view link. The ID is the actual like numerical value assigned to every single file. The name is obviously the name of the file. MIME type is the type of document it is. So in this case, it's a Google Doc. It'd be different if it was a PDF document or Excel. And then of course, the web view link. Now, as an aside, this particular RAG one I'm showing you, this one is built for PDF and Google Docs. If you're dealing with a RAG system that is also trying to deal with like large Excel files, that's kind of a whole nother ball game. I do have videos of that in the Skool. Check out kind of like the RAG plus voice lessons. They dive into that because you're actually going to be working a lot more with SQL. Again, just an aside, you'll find that most of your clients are usually operating with PDF and document text, and that tends to give you the best bang for your buck. But stuff is out there. I have content on the Excel stuff. So from there, it's going to loop over items, and then we're going to do things like set file ID. So then we do like set file ID, and we'll actually execute this step, and you can see, hey, we're just assigning variables to these things: ID, type, title, URL, and this will make more sense when you see how we do metadata. We have a delete old rows doc, so this makes sure that we don't have like duplicates. So we can run that. Right, same thing. Down here, this file string metadata, right? It's just checking to see, hey, are there any file IDs that match? Then we're inserting the document metadata. Remember how we have that second table? This is where it's coming into play. So we execute the step. Then we're actually downloading the file. And this is what it should look like: file download. We're doing it by ID. Remember, we have to literally download this file to push it to Supabase. And then we're also doing these Google file conversions. So we execute the step, and it should look just like that. Next, we have this switch. So whether it's a PDF or an actual text document, it's going to go one of 2 paths, and then it's going to go inside the actual database. So let's just run it through here. We should see it hit the switch, goes inside the vector store. So what's happening here? Operation mode will be insert documents, table name will be documents, and query name will be match documents. This should all default to this. And then we're going to do embeddings, will just be text embedding 3 small. Default data loader, this is what it should look like. This is where we're actually putting that metadata in there. And the metadata is important because this helps the AI actually figure out what file it needs to look for. So file ID, file type, and URL. Next, we have our character text splitter. And again, chunk sizes, we're doing 750 with a 200 chunk overlap. So again, remember that 100-page document, every 750 characters, we're chunking it up, and then we're overlapping each one. So the AI has a better idea of like where each page starts and ends and where it is in the grand scheme of the document itself. And then from there, it just goes back and it continues that loop over and over and over and over. And what we'll do here is I'm actually just going to run this real quick and get all 4 documents in there. Okay, cool. All 4 just got in there and that went pretty quick. So let's actually go inside of Supabase and take a look. Okay, so here we are back inside of Supabase and let's take a look at our actual table. So come up to the left, go to table editor, and we can see inside of document metadata and documents, we actually have content, we actually have embeddings from our documentation. So if you look at it, it has it by ID, it has the actual content that it took. So this is the actual chunks. And then you can take a look at the metadata as well, which includes things like the URL, the file ID, and the file type. And then over here on the embedding, that's kind of like all the math behind it, where it is in the graph. We also have document metadata. And again, this is essentially acting as our table of contents. We just have our 4 documents versus, the 14 embeddings. So that's what it looks like inside of the tables, inside of Supabase. And that is how we get documents from the Google Drive into the database. Now, really quick, let's go over the cleanup. As you can guess, this is for the documents table, and this is for the documents metadata table. So when I click inside the file IDs, what do we need to change? Well, what we need to change is here the query string, and same thing as before, it's just going to be that folder ID. So just copy paste that in there. And what we're looking for is the IDs, because what it's going to do is it's going to get all the file IDs inside of Google Drive. Then it's going to get all the file IDs inside of Supabase. It merges them. It goes through this code node. And what happens with this code is it says, hey, is there anything inside of Supabase? Are there any file IDs that occur inside of Supabase that don't occur inside of Drive? If yes, delete them. Same thing for document metadata. So when you run this, obviously you won't get an output because there won't be any mismatch, but just make sure you have the correct file ID in there. And so once you do that, you're actually ready to go. So let's actually test it. And then, so we'll just open the chat message received, and then we'll actually pop inside Supabase and we'll see how it populated that n8n chat histories table. All right, so let's actually test this guy out. So let's take a look at Q1 and see if we can ask it a specific question. There were some action items here. So let's ask it what Ben Carter's Q1 action items were. So what were Ben's Q1 action items? So we hit that, hits memory, hits the Supabase vector, does the re-ranking, and then it says, hey, Ben's Q1 action items, finalize the technical specs and deploy day 1 patch. So we see it actually gave us Q1 and Q4. That's actually not too surprising because Q1 action items can kind of mean a couple different things. Was I talking about the Q1 meeting notes, or was I talking about, hey, we're in Q4 meeting, what are you doing for next quarter? So it actually gives us both, right? Technical specs, Athena for Teams, all right, day 1 voice patch, day 1 voice patch. So it actually did a pretty good job, even though it was kind of like a fuzzy query. Here's what I will say. When you test this, obviously your document's going to be different than mine. These were just fake ones. And when I was testing for my client, he obviously had a huge batch as well. Don't be afraid to come in here inside of the system prompt and really edit this out. So it is very detailed as to what you want. This is pretty generic, what I have here. And we talked about it before. Customize, customize, customize. Be very specific about what sort of data it's trying to be finding, because if you're testing this out and you're like, hey, like I have the documents in there, it's just not giving me the answers I want, well, play with the system prompt first before you kind of throw your hands up in the air. And so after all that, I hope you have a pretty good understanding of how a RAG agent works, and then B, how to actually set it up and what it would sort of look like when you're doing it for the client. Now, speaking of clients, I know at the beginning of this video, I said I would kind of run you through the pricing structure and how I actually created this and handed it off to the client. So first things first, pricing. How did I come up with $5,000? Well, if you've been in the space for any amount of time, you've probably heard people talk about how they do pricing. And usually they frame it as, all right, we're doing it value-based. So this thing is going to save my client, $20,000 a month. And then so I'm going to take, a 30 or 40% cut of that. And then everyone walks away happy. I will tell you, maybe I just don't have the best clients ever. I think I have pretty good ones, but I've never run into a client who can really accurately say how much an automation is either saving him in terms of money or how much money it's actually making him, right? Like, I don't think most businesses have it on such a granular level that they are going to save this much time every single month and that translates to this many dollars. It just doesn't happen, at least in my experience. And because of that, the whole value play for doing pricing kind of goes out the window right off the bat. So then the question becomes, well, then how'd you come to $5,000? And frankly, it's kind of one part, that's how much I value my time. And I know how much time it's going to take me. And also another part of that $5,000 to $10,000 is what I have found to be kind of the sweet spot when you're trying to sell these AI agents and automations to businesses. Because remember, what are you trying to sell to? You're not trying to sell to mom and pop shops that have no money. You want to be selling to medium-ish size companies that are 1 to 10 million ARR that aren't just going to balk immediately at something in the 5 to 10K range, right? It's not going to ruin their lives if this project absolutely fell apart. It's not going to, but they don't come into it like, oh my gosh, this is my last $5,000. This has to work. And so because of that, I know I can usually sell between 5 to 10, 7 to 8 is kind of the sweet spot. And 5 for something that's kind of just boilerplate. I've done this a bunch of times. I know I can get done quickly. 5 just kind of makes sense. All that to say, it's kind of vibes. It's kind of what you can get away with. Are you brand new and you just need customers? You're probably gonna have to price it a little bit more favorably for the client, maybe 3K, maybe 4K. I personally would never suggest you go under 2 to 3K. You don't want to be bottom of the barrel. You don't want to do a race to the bottom because they could always go overseas and have someone build this for them for $10 an hour, right? But you're giving them a white glove approach from beginning to end. And speaking of the white glove approach, that includes actually setting it up on their servers and getting the server done. So when I first sign a client, I actually get them on a call and I run them through everything that I need them to do to self-host. So for me, I love using Hostinger. Super easy to set up n8n on this. There's tons of videos online of how to do it. Takes less than 5 minutes. So I get them on a call and I'm literally sign up for Hostinger. I'm on the call with you and let's set up n8n on your self-hosted server. So I run them through that. Then I take them to Supabase. I have them create a Supabase account. I get their login and I get their password. I also get their login and password for their n8n server so I can actually go on it. We then go to OpenAI. I have them do billing. I don't need their OpenAI password, but what we do is we go inside of n8n and I have them set up their credentials. Same thing with Google. Google, as everyone knows, is a pain in the butt, but I walk them through going into Google Workspace. We set up all the APIs. I don't need their Google password, but what I do is I make sure we create a Google Docs and a Google Drive module, and we go inside there and we painstakingly get the credentials set up. So if you're paying attention, I get on a call, we set up self-hosted n8n being Hostinger, they put in their billing. We go to OpenAI, we do the billing. I get that actually done inside of n8n. Same thing with Supabase. We don't need to do billing, but I do need their login and password. We went to Cohere for this. So I actually went to Cohere like I showed you before, did their billing. I got their login and password. Actually for that, I didn't need their login and password, but I did need them to actually connect it. And Google. And that was it. And then Slack, right? And so while that's annoying at the beginning, you have to remember what you're selling. You're selling a white glove. I am solving your problem from beginning to end. You're setting, and they might not want to set it up, but understand they own it. It's their n8n workspace. It's their APIs. It's their workflow. So this is really saving their butt, right? Because everything is under their umbrella. You can't just walk away and steal it and say, hey, it's mine. It's my password. I own this stuff. A, you really can't do that with the n8n fair license. But B, it should give them kind of a warm and fuzzy feeling knowing that they own everything you create. And lastly, once it's fully created, it's a super easy handoff because they already have everything, right? There's no weirdness going on like, okay, now let's do passwords and stuff. It's like, no, project's done. I showed you it worked. Here it is. Have at it. So that's kind of my little spiel about, actually getting it set up and giving it to the client. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. That was pretty quick. But again, yeah, biggest thing here was RAG. Make sure you understand RAG. This should definitely be a tool in your toolkit. The template is down below. And as always, let me know if you have any questions, and good luck.